Imagine standing at the base of the frozen Alps, looking up at 37 massive war elephants, about to defy nature itself. The wind cuts like a blade, snow falls from a grey and merciless sky. Behind you, thousands of soldiers stand in silence. Some are from Africa, some are from Spain, some are Gauls from the wild lands beyond Rome's comfort. They do not all speak the same language. They do not all worship the same gods. They do not all come from the same world. But on this freezing morning, they all look toward one man, Hannibal Barca. He stands before them, wrapped in a dark cloak. His face is calm, his eyes are fixed on the impossible road ahead. He is not a king, he is not a Roman nobleman born into comfort. He is a son of Carthage, a city of merchants, sailors, soldiers, and ambition. A city wounded by Rome, a city waiting for revenge. Hannibal Barca did not just lead an army, he executed one of the most daring tactical gambles in military history, to strike at Rome and defend the honor of African Carthage. This is the story of the boy who made an oath, the general who crossed the impossible, and the enemy Rome never forgot. Hannibal Barca was born in 247 BCE in Carthage, a powerful North African city located in present-day Tunisia. Carthage was wealthy. Carthage was proud. Carthage was ambitious. Its ships moved across the Mediterranean like floating markets. Its merchants carried goods, culture, and influence from Africa to Europe and beyond. But Hannibal was born into a wounded empire. Before his birth, Carthage had fought Rome in the First Punic War. That war lasted more than 20 years, and Carthage lost. Rome took Sicily. Rome forced Carthage to pay a heavy price. Rome humiliated a civilization that had once seen itself as master of the Western Mediterranean. And so, Hannibal grew up in the shadow of defeat. His father, Hamilcar Barca, was one of Carthage's greatest commanders. Hamilcar did not accept humiliation quietly. He believed Rome was not simply a rival. He believed Rome was an expanding machine. A machine that would keep moving, keep conquering, keep swallowing cities, islands, and nations, until one day it would come for Carthage itself. So Hamilcar turned his attention to Spain. There, Carthage could rebuild its wealth. There, Carthage could train its armies. There, Carthage could prepare for the next great conflict. And young Hannibal went with him. According to ancient tradition, before Hamilcar left for Spain, he brought his young son to an altar. The fire burned before them. The air was heavy with ritual. And there, in that sacred moment, Hamilcar asked Hannibal to make a promise. The boy placed his hand near the fire and swore that he would never be a friend of Rome. That oath did not become a memory, it became a mission. It shaped his childhood, it shaped his education, it shaped his understanding of the world. From that moment onward, Rome was not simply a name. Rome was the enemy. Hannibal did not grow up like an ordinary child of privilege. He grew up in military camps. He watched soldiers train, he listened as commanders discussed maps, routes, supplies, alliances, and battle plans. He learned how men behave when they are afraid. He learned how armies move. He learned how discipline holds people together when fear tries to tear them apart. He learned war, not only from books, but from dust, blood, horses, weapons, and marching men. In Spain, Hannibal became more than the son of Hamilcar Barca. He became a soldier, then a commander, then a leader men were willing to follow into danger. He learned how to command different peoples, Africans, Iberians, Numidians, Gauls, men with different customs, different fighting styles, and different loyalties. This became one of his greatest strengths. Hannibal was not leading one simple national army. He was leading a multicultural force, held together by reward, discipline, shared danger, and his own magnetic authority. When his father died, command eventually passed through the Carthaginian leadership in Spain, and then to Hannibal himself. He was still young, but his reputation grew quickly. He was bold, intelligent, physically tough, and deeply respected by his soldiers. Ancient writers described him as a man who could endure heat, cold, hunger, and exhaustion like the hardest of his men. He did not simply command from a safe distance. He suffered with his army. He marched with them. He ate with them. He endured with them. And because of that, they trusted him. Then came the event that changed history. Hannibal attacked Saguntum, a city in Spain allied with Rome. To Rome, this was an act of war. Rome demanded that Carthage surrender Hannibal. Carthage refused, and the Second Punic War began. Rome expected the conflict to follow a familiar pattern. Perhaps Carthage would defend Spain. Perhaps Roman armies would attack North Africa. Perhaps the war would be fought through fleets, ports, and predictable routes. But Hannibal had another idea. He would not wait for Rome to come to him. He would take the war into Italy itself. He would attack Rome where Rome felt safe. He would not come by sea. He would not come through the expected roads. He would come through the mountains, through the Alps, with elephants. It was a decision so dangerous that it almost seemed insane. Hannibal had tens of thousands of soldiers, cavalry, supplies, pack animals, and war elephants. To reach Italy, he had to march from Spain, cross southern Gaul, pass through hostile territory, cross the Rhone River, and then face the greatest natural barrier in Europe, the Alps. The mountains were cold, narrow, violent, and controlled by local tribes who knew every cliff, every trap, and every hidden path. No army had any business crossing them, not with cavalry, not with supply carts, and certainly not with elephants. But Hannibal understood something Rome did not. The safest route is often the route your enemy is watching. The impossible route is often the route your enemy ignores. So he marched. The crossing of the Alps became the defining image of Hannibal's life. His men climbed through snow, ice, hunger, and ambush. Some slipped from narrow paths and disappeared into the mountain depths. Horses died, supplies were lost, soldiers froze. The elephants struggled through a world they were never meant to enter. At times, the army seemed close to collapse, but Hannibal kept moving. He watched, he calculated, he waited for the right moment. And when mountain tribes attacked from above, rolling stones down onto his men, he did not panic. He studied them, he noticed their rhythm, he saw when they attacked, he saw when they withdrew. Then, under cover of darkness, he struck back. That was Hannibal's genius. He did not simply rely on courage, he relied on observation. He turned chaos into information. He turned fear into strategy. But the mountains were not finished with him. The army faced cliffs, snowstorms, hunger, and exhaustion. Some soldiers began to wonder if Rome was worth this suffering. Some looked at the path ahead and saw only death. Hannibal saw the doubt in their eyes, so he gathered them on a high ridge. Below them, far away beyond the white teeth of the mountains, lay Italy. Hannibal pointed toward the distant land, and he reminded them why they had come. There was Rome's heart. There was the prize. There was history waiting. For the first time in days, the soldiers did not see only snow. They saw purpose. They saw Rome. They saw the reason behind the suffering. Then, disaster struck again. A landslide had destroyed part of the route. The path ahead was blocked by broken rock and ice. The soldiers stopped. The elephants could not pass. The army was trapped between the mountain behind them and the broken road before them. This was the moment when lesser commanders would turn back. But Hannibal could not turn back. Behind him was failure. Ahead of him was Rome. So he ordered his men to cut into the mountain itself. They burned wood against the rock. They weakened the stone. They hammered. They dug. They carved the path by hand through the frozen barrier. It was slow. It was brutal. It was almost madness. But it worked. One by one, the elephants moved forward. African war elephants, animals of heat and open land, stepping across ice above the clouds. The soldiers were too tired to cheer, but they were not too tired to understand what they had done. They had crossed the impossible. When Hannibal finally descended into Italy, his army was weakened. He had lost many men. He had lost animals. He had lost supplies. But he had gained something more powerful: shock. Rome could hardly believe it. Hannibal was in Italy. The Carthaginian general had crossed the Alps, and he had brought war to Rome's doorstep. Then he began to win. At the Battle of Trebia in 218 BCE, Hannibal used cold weather, terrain, hidden troops, and Roman overconfidence to crush a Roman army. He understood that battles were not won by strength alone, they were won by timing, psychology, patience, and deception. Then came Lake Trasimene in 217 BCE. There, Hannibal created one of the greatest ambushes in ancient military history. He hid his forces in the hills. He waited as the Roman army marched into a trap. Fog covered the landscape. The Romans moved forward, unaware that death was waiting on every side. Then Hannibal gave the signal. His army attacked from the hidden slopes. The Roman force was destroyed. Rome was shaken. But Hannibal's most famous victory came at Cannae in 216 BCE. Cannae was not just a battle, it was a masterpiece of military design. The Romans came with a massive army. They believed their superior numbers would crush Hannibal. But Hannibal allowed the Roman center to push forward. Slowly, carefully, deliberately, he drew them in. His own center bent but did not break. Then his stronger wings closed around the Romans from both sides. His cavalry attacked from the rear, and suddenly the Roman army was surrounded. What followed was one of the most devastating defeats Rome ever suffered. Tens of thousands of Roman soldiers died. Rome lost fathers, sons, senators, officers, allies. Across the Mediterranean, people began to wonder, could Rome itself fall? Hannibal had done the unthinkable. He had beaten Rome again and again on its own soil. But victory in battle did not become victory in war. And this is the tragic part of Hannibal's biography. He was brilliant in the field, but he did not receive enough support from Carthage. He needed reinforcements, money, siege equipment, political backing. But Carthage hesitated. Some leaders feared his growing power. Others underestimated the opportunity before them. And so Hannibal remained in Italy for years, winning battles, holding territory, and threatening Rome, but unable to capture Rome itself. Rome, meanwhile, refused to surrender. That was Rome's own terrifying strength. Rome could lose armies and still raise new ones. Rome could suffer disaster and still reorganize. Rome could bleed and still continue. Then a young Roman commander began to rise. His name was Scipio, and Scipio studied Hannibal carefully. He did not simply chase Hannibal around Italy, he attacked Carthaginian power in Spain. Then he carried the war into North Africa. Now Carthage itself was in danger. Hannibal was recalled from Italy to defend his homeland. After years of fighting on Roman soil, the great Carthaginian general returned to Africa. The final confrontation came in 202 BCE at the Battle of Zama. There, Hannibal faced Scipio, and for once, Hannibal met an opponent who had learned from him. Scipio neutralized the Carthaginian elephants. He used disciplined Roman tactics, and he defeated Hannibal's army. Hannibal lost. Carthage lost. The Second Punic War ended with Rome as the dominant power in the Western Mediterranean. But Hannibal's story did not end at Zama. After the war, he became a statesman in Carthage. He worked to reform the government. He tried to strengthen the city financially. But Rome still feared him. Even defeated, Hannibal remained dangerous, not because he had an army, but because he had a mind Rome could not ignore. His name alone disturbed Roman confidence, and eventually, Roman pressure forced him into exile. Hannibal moved from court to court in the eastern Mediterranean. He offered his military knowledge to rulers who opposed Rome, but Rome never stopped watching him. Even as an old man, he was still treated as a threat. Around 183 BCE, surrounded by enemies and facing capture, Hannibal chose death over Roman humiliation. Ancient accounts say he took poison, ending his life on his own terms. He had spent his entire life resisting Rome, from the altar of his childhood to the frozen Alps, from the killing fields of Cannae to the final loneliness of exile. Hannibal Barca lived as a man shaped by one promise. He never became Rome's friend. Hannibal did not save Carthage in the end. Rome would later destroy the city completely in the Third Punic War. But Hannibal's name survived the fall of his homeland. It survived because he became more than a general. He became a symbol of strategic imagination. He proved that courage without intelligence is wasteful, but intelligence with courage can terrify an empire. He showed that a commander could turn geography into a weapon, fear into momentum, and impossibility into history. Rome won the war, but Rome remembered Hannibal forever. And that is why, more than 2,000 years later, when we speak of military genius, tactical brilliance, and the courage to challenge overwhelming power, one image still rises above the snow. A Carthaginian general, an army in the mountains, 37 elephants, and Hannibal Barca walking calmly toward Rome through the impossible.